the human suffering, the human level of suffering, if you will, sure, that's always going to happen for all the reasons you're saying. It's that different type. Our soul shouldn't be suffering. Our
Right.
soul should be able to look at it and say, this is all part of it. This is all
That's
us
right.
learning and
That's right.
figuring it out. And
That's
that's
your
a
goal.
really interesting way to say it. I hadn't thought of it that way before, but that makes a lot of sense. If from a soul perspective, you can look at that suffering and say, I'm indifferent towards it because I
Mhm.
know it's part of the program, then
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the
And
aspiration.
instead of getting, crawling up on your couch and pulling the covers around and going, I'm a terrible person, or, whatever, life sucks. Instead saying, oh, I'm going through something hard right now. Let me figure out the kindest, most loving way to move through this.
How do you think about that? Let me say this, because I love this conversation. I say that often, but I love most conversations. But this is so interesting and so fundamental, I think, to how we think and function as humans. So I'm going to keep pressing on it. Like, how do you think about that person who has a debilitating disease, or maybe some, like, let's go back to the times of slavery. Somebody, I read a book or something, I forget where it was now, and it was one of the most horrific things to imagine. It was about somebody was retelling the story of a slave auction, and an African woman who literally had their child ripped from their hands, and the slave auctioneer was holding the child, dangling it over, and sold it off to somebody, and the mother had to watch this happen, right? When you think of events like that through the lens of which we're talking about, I think it still holds, but I want to test it as far as we can. Like, so in that moment, the thought is for that woman to think, obviously that's horrible, that's horrific, that's suffering you just spoke about. But on some level, there be, I hesitate to use the word, but should there be some comfort in knowing that in the grand scheme of things, this is all part of the program? Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, that's really hard to sort of say, yeah, just
Of
understand, look
course,
at the
because it's
big
hard.
picture,
We all know it's
honey.
horrible. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I mean, some horrific situation like that. And of course, there are hundreds, if not thousands. And for those who believe in reincarnation in human form, some of the work that I've done shamanically, I've died many times horrifically
Mm.
for speaking the way that I'm speaking to you right now, right? For being a healer and being murdered and having my child taken from me. And I've had all of these experiences, in other lifetimes. I'm not saying at all that it should be accepted as part, in a situation like that, we have to remember we're still fully human.
Mm.
And that means the full range of emotions. So that means someone in that terrible position, and even the parents whose children have been killed because of gun violence in
Mm-hmm.
this country.
Mm-hmm.
I think of them too,
Of
having
course.
your child ripped from you. I can't, and I'm sure as a parent, you get this too. I can't wrap my head around that. Because we're fully human, we have to go through the human process of grieving, and we have to go through the rage and the pain and the sorrow, and have those experiences. We can't bypass them, because if we were just to say it all happens for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
that's spiritual bypass, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we need to experience that deeply so that we can find whatever wisdom is in it, and everyone's will be different,
Mm.
you know.
Mm.
um
Mm.
yeah, I can't, obviously I couldn't speak for
Sure.
everyone who's ever suffered in that way, but to say that one thing for sure, and this is true for all trauma, you
Mm.
can't bypass it. You don't have to re-traumatize yourself by going back through it, but you do have to grieve the loss of whatever was taken from you.
Yeah, and there's something in that. I don't know where this is going to go. I'm thinking of it live as I say it, but I think there's something in it. Like, I wonder that as we're talking about that, as I was giving that example, and then as you spoke about it, and the school shootings and the different things, there's an energy to that. There's something that gets elicited in me. I can only speak for myself, that I feel, that tells me there's something meaningful in that. There's something more to it. There's something, as horrific as those scenarios we talk about are, that human ability to process that, to feel that pain, to think about how I can try and heal or be better or help somebody not have to suffer that pain. There's something so beautiful in that, something so magical in that. And I wonder how that reconciles back to the soul. So, right, there's the human versus the soul. Is in some ways, I'll just say it in the simple terms, in some ways, is the human form better because it has that ability to process and feel that pain, and not have the big picture perspective to feel like, well, it's all part of the plan, it's all what it is, because that might be true. And our souls may know that. and maybe this is biased because we are human, but there's a part of me that feels like I wouldn't want to give up that human experience. As horrible as it can be, there's something so beautiful in it.
Yeah.
Is there anything to that? I don't know. What's the reaction to that?
Yeah, I think I get it. I mean, obviously, I'm not an authority on this
Sure.
myself, but my feeling would be that, um, yeah, if we go back to the spiritual ambassador idea, that yeah, my suffering return. I'm reporting back to collective consciousness. This is something that humans have experienced. We need to do something with
Mm,
this
mm,
information,
mm.
and I don't know what to do with it. So let's figure it out. Let's figure it out. How can we make sure that this unnecessary level
Right.
of suffering doesn't happen again?
Yeah, there's something very
Continue.
optimistic and hopeful with that view of life in the universe, that and it's ironic perhaps because it does, you said the phrase before, it does start to sound and look a little bit in that religious cliche of, everything happens for a reason or God has a plan. It does start to look like that a little bit, but it's more nuanced. It's a little bit more grounded in, I guess, science, call it what you will. I don't know what the right term
Mhm.
is, but the concept still holds. This idea of we are constantly learning and evolving, where you started. There's something in that that feels like, okay, no matter how horrific the thing is, and there will be horrific things, obviously,
Mhm.
unfortunately, it is working towards something that's hopefully going to get us to a better place.
Mhm.
You kind of can understand why certain people that believe in religious faith take so much solace in that sentiment. You can
Mhm.
understand it.